bro science isn't all bad. Just because we don't have a randomized control trial to back something up doesn't mean that it isn't effective. You see, part of the bottleneck that we face is that we have lots of people that have anecdotal experience with things and even pretty decent personal evidence in even small groups, sometimes even large groups. But just because we can't prove it with science doesn't mean that there isn't a positive effect. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to talk about bro science, true or false, that has been demonstrated with evidence, right? I am an evidence-based guy, but I want to also make it very clear that there are a number of things that I personally believe from a bro science perspective to work that maybe don't have the evidence to back them up. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Please do drop a comment down below though for the algorithm. Anytime you see one of my videos, just drop a quick comment. It's amazing what it does for getting these videos out there. So the first thing, you have to eat big to get big. Well, this is partially true, but the reason I bring it up is because we have recent evidence to suggest that this isn't the case. You don't need to eat big to get big. As a matter of fact, Dr. Don Layman, really the godfather of anything leucine or protein or muscle protein synthesis related, he has gone on record and said that he believes about 60 to 70% of muscle growth just comes from the stimulus itself, just training the muscle and stimulating the muscle, closely followed by protein intake being the driver for muscle growth, then followed by calories, and lastly followed by carbohydrates. So, does more calories put you in a better position to build muscle? Yes, but not nearly as much as protein, and definitely not nearly as much as adequate stimulus. So do you need to eat big to get big? No. You could eat in somewhat of a deficit and still build muscle. So you definitely don't need to eat big to get big. Fasted cardio is the best way to burn more fat. Obviously, the bodybuilders have been doing this forever. Sometimes I look at the bodybuilders and I say, you know what? You clearly know how to get big and shredded. We should look to you because you do this, even if there's not an RCT to back it up, because the RCTs don't often have bodybuilders or people that are really trying to get big and shredded. They're usually looking at regular people that are just living regular lives, which is important for most of the general population. So, does fasted cardio actually work? Cardio first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. You will oxidize more fat doing fasted cardio. But all of the evidence tells us that, well, it doesn't matter if you do fasted cardio or not, because at the end of the day, at the end of the week, calories net out and the results net out. The reason is because when most people do fasted cardio, they eventually find ways to overcompensate with food, whether they realize it or not. It might not be that day, it might not even be that week. But when you look at it over the course of 4, 6, 8 weeks, they net out the same. But these are usually looking at regular people. You see, the people that are focusing on doing fasted cardio to burn more fat, what they want to do is they want to be able to also track their calories so they stay in that deficit that was induced by the cardio. Because yes, you do oxidize more fat in that moment on an empty stomach than you do in a fed state. That is clear. Fat oxidation rates are up significantly, but you have to make sure that you don't overeat to compensate for it. So it's a nuanced explanation, but at the end of the day, doing fasted cardio will burn more fat in that session. So if you can control your appetite throughout the rest of the day, that's what I do. I love my fasted cardio, and it is a absolute golden rule for me for fat loss. But I also consume things like electrolytes later on in the day, anytime I get hungry. Like I curb my appetite with salt. I curb my appetite with different electrolytes. I put a link down below for the ones that I use. I use LMNT, and lately I've been using the sparkling ones because they just taste better, and they're just, it's like having a soda.
This one by far is my favorite flavor. This one's the grapefruit salt, and they have it in a sparkling version. So this is LMNT. It's 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams magnesium. Throughout the course of the day, it feels like I'm drinking a soda without all the garbage. I feel like I'm actually mineralizing and hydrating, but also curbing my appetite and having something that tastes pretty darn good too. But then again, during my workouts, this is the really refreshing thing. There's actually some really cool science on receptors in your mouth. So you actually feel like you're getting more hydrated when you have something that's a little bit carbonated. So sipping on one of these actual ready to drink LMNT sparkling drinks during my workouts is pretty darn awesome. But the link down below gets you a free sample variety pack with their stick packs. So those are the good tried and true ones that you can add to water, you can add to a bottle, add to a jug, sip on them throughout throughout the day, but you can get a free sample variety pack of one of those with any purchase. So if you try their ready to drink sparkling version, you can try the regular stick packs too. So that link is down below. It's drinklmnt.com/Thomas.
Next up is the post-workout shake. Again, partially true. Okay, this wasn't even bro science. This was real science. You need to have protein after your workout. We know now from the scientific evidence that protein could really be consumed anywhere from up to 24 to 48 hours after your workout, and you're going to get satisfactory protein synthesis. In fact, inside of 24 hours, you're going to get optimal protein synthesis. It doesn't need to be right after your workout. If carbohydrates are in the equation and you're trying to increase glycogen uptake or resynthesis, then you want to have carbs inside of 2 to 4 hours, or 30 minutes to 4 hours, really, after your workout. But protein, it doesn't matter. Protein synthesis stays elevated for 24 to 48 hours. Just get your protein in. Carbs are the only thing, if you're doing that, that would matter. The next one is one that I still believe in. Don't mix fats and carbs. Charles Poliquin was really the guy that made this infamous. He suggested, why would we ever want to spike our insulin along with dietary fats coming in? Insulin's going to turn on absorption. We're going to store these dietary fats. The evidence is actually unclear. Some people will say, oh, it's as long as your calories are met, you're fine. Problem is that when are we at equilibrium with our calories? We don't really know. So if you combine fats and carbs, you do turn on insulin spikes. You do also turn on absorption, and then you also add fats, which store easily anyway. So the evidence points to, well, as long as you're not in a surplus, this isn't a problem. How on earth are we supposed to know if we are in a surplus in a given moment? Nothing resets at midnight to zero. So if I were to sit down and eat fats and carbohydrates combined right now, where's the cutoff for me to be in a surplus? Because in a surplus, it's going to be exponentially more stored. So I am of the belief that it doesn't make sense to combine fats and carbs. And from an evolutionary perspective, we don't see fats and carbs combined in nature very often. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But again, the evidence looks at general population cohorts and where do people net out, and not necessarily looking at getting lean, right? So bodybuilders, people that are into fitness and trying to get as lean and muscular as possible, I think it does make sense to allocate proteins and fats together and proteins and carbs together, but not protein, carbs, and fat all together if you can possibly avoid it. Cardio post-workout, the best way to lose fat. You should always do your cardio after your workout. I would say truth, if we really want to get down to it. You know, there's a difference between statistically significant and meaningful. Okay, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that it's a meaningful difference to do your cardio after a workout, but not necessarily statistically significant from a fat loss perspective. But I could come up with a lot of bro science legit reasons though. Bottom line is, if you deplete your glycogen during a workout and then you go do cardio, you are more apt to oxidize fat. The question is, are you actually training hard enough to deplete your glycogen? Are you really going through 200 to 400 grams of carbohydrates during your workout? Probably not. However, if you train fasted, you haven't eaten for 12 hours, and you do a good hard leg workout, you could deplete your glycogen stores to a point where you're depleted enough that when you do low intensity cardio, you're more apt to oxidize fat. And the evidence does point to that. The other cool thing is that you're gonna have an increase in growth hormone post-workout. That's gonna increase lipolysis, sort of the releasing of free fatty acids off the glycerol backbone. So you would burn more fat that way. But I think the big piece here is, who wants to do cardio pre-workout? Like, you're just making it so you can't push yourself in your actual workout. So yeah, it's really splitting hairs, but I think there is evidence there. Like, cardio post-workout does make more sense from a fat loss perspective. So it sounds like total gym bro type talk, but it really does make sense, especially when you're trying to squeak every little bit of body fat percentage that you can. Carbs build muscle faster. This is really false. I mean, I had Dr. Mike Isertel on my channel, and he even fell on the sword here and said, you know, really, like, carbs don't induce more muscle protein synthesis. They don't necessarily help you there. Okay, they might help a little bit. They're bottom of the totem pole. Remember, stimulus, protein, calories, carbs. But where carbs can help is they do increase your appetite. So it's maybe easier to meet your protein threshold if you eat more carbs. They definitely stimulate appetite. Additionally, they might make you more parasympathetic, so you're more likely to recover and relax and reduce cortisol. These things matter, but in the same breath that many exercise physiologists talk about carbs decreasing cortisol and making it so you can grow, a lot of them will also say, well, we shouldn't be worried about cortisol, it's negligible. So case in point, it's flipping negligible. But if it lets you eat more and lets you recover and sleep better, then you need to focus on it. For me, carbs at night do help me sleep. So I find my muscle growth and my recovery is a little better if carbs are on board around bedtime. But do I require them to actually grow muscle for that actual myofibrillar growth? No. You have to shock your body. I love this one. This one is my favorite because it's a real true nuanced answer. Define shock. Technically, progressive overload, just lifting heavier, is a shock, right? If you're referring to shock meaning an adaptation, then yeah, I'm with you. You got to shock your body. But an adaptation isn't always about shock, it's just about progressive overload. But people say, well, sometimes I need to lift heavy, other times I need to chase a pump. That isn't necessarily a shock. Those are just two different avenues. You could theoretically stack those in one day and maybe get the same effect. It's not about the shock, it's just the fact that you're doing two different things. Okay, it's like saying, I am good at lifting and I am good at running. Running is shocking my system to have better fitness. Lifting is shocking my system to have better fitness. Okay, well, fitness is a vague term, just like shock is sort of a vague term. Okay, endurance training is a whole different avenue than strength training. So to say that it's working on your fitness is true, but it's not absolute or defined enough to really say yes or no. Hopefully that makes sense. But shocking is really just about overload. So yes, shocking the muscle works, but you don't need to shock your body by doing crazy things. No pain, no gain. I really like this one too because a very good friend of mine that is quite literally a genius. He works the special operations communities out of the Army just like I do. And that's how I know him. This dude is a mathematician. He is a legit physicist, the smartest person I know. He's literally doing brain surgery in like the most crazy situations. The guy is a genius. Okay, he has led me to believe that there is some real solid evidence to support nociceptors, like pain receptors, and muscle growth. Now, we don't have solid RCTs yet, but we have some stuff that makes sense. So perhaps blood flow restriction training works because the pain is so high that it triggers growth of the muscle from the pain response. And it kind of makes sense. Like those that can endure the most right kind of pain are going to get more growth. So in a way, no pain, no gain, but pain shouldn't be chronic joint pain, uncomfortable inflammation pain. It's the ability to endure the proper pain to signal that adaptation. I'm going to end on an interesting supplement one. Carnitine Burns Fat. Yes, it does. We have carnitine palmitoyltransferase. We have carnitine. It's what allows fat to shuttle into a cell to be burned to the mitochondria. Okay, but if we take it, does it do anything? Only if we're deficient. So the bodybuilding, the fitness communities will use carnitine because it burns fat. Well, if you are fasted and you have been training a lot, 80% of your carnitine stores get depleted in one good training session. So if you're not repleting carnitine through your diet or supplementation, yeah, you would be depleted, in which case a carnitine supplement would help you. So carnitine, first thing in the morning, when you're depleted from the day prior to doing fasted cardio, could in theory help shuttle more fat into the mitochondria to be oxidized. So yes, it is true. It's not necessarily false, even though some of the evidence-based community would say it is. We have to get down to the granular. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.